Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, Maths Made Easy with Terry in 10 minutes. All right, so in the next video we're going to talk about now in this video series is going to be the commonly used symbols, okay? I thought it was important that I just highlight these things so that when we start solving questions in other video series, you can just, okay, Terry spoke about this in this video, all right? So the first one is that we've talked about it in the previous video. We have the addition sign, the subtraction sign, we have the division sign, and the multiplication sign, all right? We've discussed this as well. Now, the second one I want to talk about is when you see things like A, B, C. It's what we call the constants, okay? So these are values that are fixed, but they don't change. So usually we use the ABC, like the speed of light, like we use for mass, okay? Dependent on gravity, all right? We use for the value of gravity, gravitational force, or these are values that are constant in a particular scenario, all right? In a particular scenario equation. So these are what we call constant. Now, but the third one that we usually use, you'll see things like X, Y, Z, usually is what we call variables. So when you hear variables, these are quantity that can change or they can vary, taking on different values. So a constant, these are fixed, okay? So one of the things, for constant, these are fixed value, all right? And that means they don't change. But these ones are variables. So they are variables because they vary. So these are referred to as constants, all right? They are fixed values. These are variables. Now, some other symbols you will see will be something like what we call the squared. So you see like x squared, y squared, a squared. That means a particular variable or constant raised to power 2. Okay, so that means you're trying to multiply that number by itself twice, all right? So for instance, when we say 4 squared, for instance, so we're referring to 4 times 4, and that will give us 16. So the 4 squared means that you have to multiply 4 by itself. Similarly, we have cube. So the cube sign, raised to power 3, so it could be anything raised to power 3. So for instance, we can have 2 raised to power 3. All right, so this is where you're multiplying that number by itself 3 times. So like in 2 raised to power 3, is going to be 2 times 2 times 2. And that will give us 8. Okay. There's another one again. I'll just quickly talk about that now in the next whiteboard. So it's what we call the square root sign. So the square root sign is basically the reverse of the square. So remember the square we talked about here. So the square root sign is basically the reverse of that. So you are looking for the number that you will multiply by itself to get the original number. So that means if we have the square root of 9, so basically it's saying that what number are we going to multiply by itself that is going to give us 9, and basically is 3. But in square root, you need to have the plus or minus. Okay, we're going to talk about that very soon. So usually how it's being written is plus or minus 3. You have to have the plus or minus there. It's very important. Okay, I'm going to talk about the plus or minus sign. So basically it refers to the plus or minus, refers to that the answer for this could either be minus 3 or plus 3. So then writing it separately, we write that together, so it's going to become a plus or minus. So if, for instance, we have square root of 4, the answer is going to be a plus or minus 2. So that means it's either minus 2 satisfies this as well, or you can say plus 2. Another one you could see is the brackets. You will notice in some of the solvings we'll be doing, we're using loads of brackets. And this is basically we're trying to say we're putting these things together. So that means we're having 2 plus 3 together, and both of them, we want to multiply that by 5. So the bracket sign here means that 2 and 3 are together as a single entity. So we've talked about plus, minus, and divide, constant, variables, squared, cube, and that. But there are other ones I'm going to also mention now. So the different types that we'll talk about. So in some cases, what you will notice is we have some mathematical expressions, okay? So we're going to talk about Bodmans later, but we'll leave that for now, all right? So the number 8, so like I said, we have this, we talk about the square root, we talked about the bracket, talk about the plus and the rest of it. So number 8, the one we're going to talk about is the percentage sign, all right? It's the percentage sign. You can call it percentage. So some call it percent, all right? They're both the same thing. So when I talk about percent, it's talking about the proportion in relation to the whole, all right? So we talk about the proportion in relation to the whole. So for instance, if we say something like 20%, so that means it's 20 out of 100. So that is the whole, in this case, is 100, okay? So it does not have to be 100, all right? But it's the proportion in relation to the whole that we have to talk about. Yeah, so these are usually the basic 8, all right, that you should know, but I will just quickly go through some quick ones as well that you should also make sure you go back and revise. So we have the equal to sign, okay? This is the equal to sign. You can also have the not equal to sign. So it's like this, not equal to. So that means there are things you need to go back and have a look. The next one we have is the less than sign, okay? So when we see the sign facing to your left is the less than, okay? The next one facing to your right is gonna be the greater than, okay? So we have the less than, we have the greater than. Then another one again you should revise is the less than or equal to. So that means the value is less than or equal to. So that means in this case it's less than or equal to. Then the next one you can look at as well is a greater than or equal to. Okay. All right. So the greater than or equal to. So we have the less than when it's facing the left, and we have the greater than when it's facing the right. I also mentioned this in the other video, the plus or minus sign. I've talked about this. So the plus or minus, so that means it's either plus or minus, like when I talked about the square root, okay? There are some interesting ones as well. We have the X bar. I don't know. It's more used when we talk about statistics. We have the X bar. Usually is pronounced as X bar, all right? Usually refer to the mean of samples. Okay, so if you want to say the mean of a particular sample, it could be a population or anything. So the mean is but not the population, but the sample, because the sample is a subset of a population. It use the X bar. But if you want to do for the population, we use the mu. Okay, this is the mu sign. So the mu is for the mean of population. All right, the mu is the mean of population, while the X bar is the mean of a sample. The other interesting one, you can go back and have a look. The first one will be the sigma sign. The sigma, all right? So usually it's used in different situations, but mostly we use that in standard deviation, okay? So these are signs that I want you to go back and just review. I'm not gonna go into each of them and explain, all right? It's just because it's just signs that are common as well, but are things you should know. Next one is the sigma sign. Some people call it the capital sigma. So most times it's used in statistics, but also used in maths as well. And when you have the sigma sign, it means that you need to sum. Remember I talked about the sum or add, so that the sum or add. So I think that is that. that are the symbols that I think that you need to just have a look at and remind yourself. So we have the plus, the add, subtract, divide, and multiply. We have the constants, that is values that does not change. We have the variable, we have the squared, we have the cube, all right? We have the square root sign, and like I said, for the square root sign, it has to be plus or minus. You have to make sure you remember that. We talk about that a lot, especially when we get to quadratic equation or any form of simplification of equations, and you have to square root both sides. So you need to know that the answer, especially when looking for a variable, is always plus or minus. And we have brackets, so that means you solve the ones in brackets. Shall we talk about board math? Talk about percentage, where it's a proportion of a whole, and I talked about all the signs that you need to know. All right. Next video, I'm going to talk about the mathematical precedents, so the board math or the bead math. Okay. I'll just quickly talk about that so that it will just to remind us again of what is expected. Is that okay? Of what is expected for each one. All right, thank you very much, and I will see you in the next video. Please don't forget to subscribe and like so that you can get notifications as well, and you will be the first to know when I upload a new video. All right, see you soon.